Have you ever had a moment when someone you trusted asked you for something that made every alarm bell in your head start ringing? That's exactly what happened to me 6 months before my daughter's wedding. My name is David, and I thought I knew the man my daughter was about to marry. I was wrong. Dead wrong. It started with what seemed like an innocent phone call on a Tuesday morning in March. I was in my home office, reviewing some client files for my accounting practice, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Marcus, future son-in-law, the contact name my daughter Emma had insisted I use when she got engaged 8 months earlier. "Hey, David," Marcus said, his voice carrying that familiar easy confidence that had initially impressed me when Emma first brought him home 2 years ago. "Do you have a few minutes to talk? I wanted to run something by you." "Of course," I said, setting aside my paperwork. Marcus rarely called me directly. Most of our communication went through Emma. "What's on your mind?" "Well, it's about the wedding, actually, and our future together. Emma and I have been talking, and we have an opportunity that could really set us up for success, but we need some help making it happen." I leaned back in my chair, already feeling a slight unease. In my 30 years as an accountant, I'd heard variations of this conversation before, usually from clients who were about to ask for loans they couldn't afford to repay. "What kind of opportunity?" I asked carefully. "There's this amazing investment opportunity that just came up. A friend of mine from college. You remember Tyler, right? The one who started that tech company. He's putting together an exclusive investment group for a new cryptocurrency venture. The minimum buy-in is $100,000, but Marcus, the returns could be incredible. We're talking about potentially turning that $100,000 into $500,000 or more within the first year." My unease deepened into something closer to alarm. "Marcus, cryptocurrency investments are extremely risky, especially the newer ones. The market is highly volatile." I know, he interrupted, "but Tyler has a track record. His last venture returned 300% to early investors. This isn't some random gamble. It's a carefully researched opportunity with real growth potential. And you're asking me for $100,000? "We're asking for help, yes. Look, David, I know it's a lot of money, but think about it as an investment in Emma's future. If this pays off the way Tyler believes it will, Emma and I could buy a house, start our family without financial stress, maybe even help you and Patricia retire more comfortably." The mention of my wife Patricia and our retirement struck me as particularly manipulative. Marcus knew that Patricia had been worried about our retirement savings, especially after the market volatility of the past few years. "Marcus, have you discussed this with Emma?" "Of course. She's excited about the possibility, but she's also nervous about asking you for such a large sum. That's why I wanted to talk to you first, man-to-man. Something about the phrase man-to-man rubbed me the wrong way. It felt like Marcus was trying to create some kind of masculine conspiracy, excluding Emma from the financial decision-making about her own future. "I appreciate you coming to me directly," I said, "but $100,000 is a significant amount of money. I'd need to see detailed information about this investment, including prospectuses, financial projections, and Tyler's track record before I could even consider it." "Absolutely," Marcus said quickly. "I can get you all of that. The thing is, this opportunity has a pretty tight timeline. Tyler needs to know who's in by the end of next week. These exclusive opportunities don't stay open long." Another red flag. Legitimate investment opportunities don't typically require immediate decisions without proper due diligence time. "Marcus, I'm going to be honest with you. What you're describing sounds like it could be a high-pressure sales situation, or potentially even a scam. Before I invest a penny, I'd want to verify Tyler's credentials, review audited financial statements from his previous ventures, and probably consult with my financial advisor." The silence on the other end of the line stretched uncomfortably long. When Marcus finally spoke, his tone had cooled considerably. "I understand you're being cautious," he said, "but I'm a little hurt that you'd suggest I might be involved in a scam. I'm going to be your daughter's husband in 6 months. Don't you think I have her best interests at heart?" "I'm sure you do," I said, though I was beginning to have doubts. "But good intentions don't protect against bad investments. Can you send me Tyler's contact information? And the investment materials you mentioned?" "I'll see what I can do," Marcus said. "But David, I hope you'll keep an open mind about this. Emma and I really see this as our chance to start our marriage on solid financial footing. After we hung up, I sat in my office for a long time, staring out the window at the oak tree Patricia and I had planted when we first moved into this house 28 years ago. Something about Marcus's request felt wrong on multiple levels, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what bothered me most. That evening, I decided to talk to Patricia about it. We were sitting on our back deck, enjoying the mild spring evening and sharing a bottle of wine, our daily ritual for decompressing after work. Marcus called me today, I began, swirling the wine in my glass. He wants us to invest $100,000 in some cryptocurrency venture. Patricia's eyebrows shot up. He asked you for $100,000. Well, he framed it as an investment opportunity that could benefit Emma's future, but essentially, yes. That's a lot of money, David. What kind of investment? I explained Marcus's pitch, including the tight timeline and the promises of extraordinary returns. As I talked, I watched Patricia's expression shift from surprise to concern to something approaching alarm. David, that sounds like every financial scam warning we've ever heard. The high-pressure timeline, the promise of exclusive access, the unrealistic returns, those are all classic red flags. That's what I thought too, but Marcus seemed genuinely convinced it was legitimate. Or he's very good at acting convinced, Patricia said quietly. David, what do we really know about Marcus? I mean, really know? It was a question that had been nagging at me since the phone call. Marcus had been dating Emma for 2 years, but most of what I knew about him came from Emma's glowing reports or from casual conversations at family gatherings. He was 28, the same age as Emma. He claimed to work in marketing for a mid-sized company, though he was often vague about the specifics. He drove a nice car, dressed well, and always picked up the check when we went out to dinner, which had initially impressed me as a sign that he was financially responsible, but now I was wondering, where did his money actually come from? You're right, I said to Patricia. I don't think we know as much about him as we should. What are you going to do? I'm going to do what I should have done before Emma got engaged to him. I'm going to find out who Marcus really is. The next morning I called my friend James, who runs a private investigation firm. James and I had been college roommates, and he'd helped me with background checks for some of my higher-profile accounting clients over the years. James, I need a favor, I said when he answered. I need you to run a background check on my daughter's fiancé. Trouble in paradise. Maybe. He just asked me for $100,000 for what sounds like a scam investment, and I'm realizing I don't know much about his background. What's his full name and date of birth? I gave James the information I had, which wasn't much. Marcus had always been somewhat evasive about his past, claiming he preferred to focus on the future rather than dwelling on where he came from. I'll see what I can find, James said. Give me a few days. While I waited for James's report, I decided to do some investigating of my own. That afternoon I called the company where Marcus claimed to work, Digital Marketing Solutions. When I asked to speak with Marcus Thompson in the marketing department, there was a long pause. I'm sorry, the receptionist said, but we don't have anyone by that name in our marketing department. Are you sure you have the right company? This is Digital Marketing Solutions, correct? Yes, but I've been here for 3 years, and we've never had a Marcus Thompson. Could you be thinking of a different company? I hung up the phone with a sick feeling in my stomach. Marcus had been lying about where he worked. If he was lying about something as basic as his job, what else was he lying about? That evening, Emma called to check in, as she did most nights. She was bubbling with excitement about wedding preparations and how wonderful Marcus was being about all the planning details. Dad, Marcus told me he talked to you about that investment opportunity, she said. Isn't it exciting? I know $100,000 is a lot, but if it works out the way Tyler thinks it will, we could have such an amazing start to our marriage. I chose my words carefully. Emma, have you met Tyler? The friend who's supposedly running this investment? Not yet, but Marcus says I will soon. He's been really busy getting everything set up for the investment group. And Marcus told you about the tight timeline? Yeah, that's a little stressful. But Marcus says that's how these exclusive opportunities work. You have to be ready to move quickly. I could hear Marcus's words and phrases coming out of my daughter's mouth, and it made me feel sick. Emma was a smart woman. She had an MBA and worked as a project manager for a consulting firm, but she was also trusting to a fault. especially with people she loved. Emma, I want you to be careful about this investment. Before anyone puts money into anything, we should verify Tyler's credentials and— Dad, you sound like you don't trust Marcus, Emma interrupted, her voice taking on a defensive edge. He's going to be my husband. Don't you think he wants what's best for me? I'm sure he does, sweetheart. I just want to make sure you're both making informed decisions. Marcus said you might be skeptical. He said older people sometimes have trouble understanding new investment opportunities, like cryptocurrency. The condescension in that statement made my blood boil, but I forced myself to stay calm. Emma, I've been managing investments for 30 years. I understand risk assessment and due diligence. This has nothing to do with age and everything to do with protecting your financial future. I know you're trying to look out for me, Dad, but Marcus and I are adults. We can make our own decisions. After we hung up, I sat in my study feeling defeated. Marcus was clearly manipulating Emma, turning her against my concerns by framing them as generational bias rather than legitimate caution. 3 days later, James called with his background check results. David, you're going to want to sit down for this, he said. Your future son-in-law isn't who he claims to be. What did you find? First, his real name isn't Marcus Thompson. It's Marcus Valdez. He legally changed his name 2 years ago, right around the time he would have started dating your daughter. My heart sank. What else? He doesn't work for Digital Marketing Solutions, obviously. According to his tax records, he's been unemployed for the past 8 months. Before that, he worked for a series of telemarketing companies, most of which have been shut down for fraudulent business practices. Telemarketing fraud? Gets worse. He has 2 criminal convictions, one for credit card fraud and one for identity theft. Both were plea deals that kept him out of prison, but he's on probation. I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. James, are you sure about this? I've triple-checked everything. David, there's more. I found evidence that he's been using at least 3 different aliases over the past 5 years. The Marcus Thompson identity is just the latest one. What about this Tyler person he mentioned? The one with the investment opportunity? I couldn't find any college records showing that Marcus attended the school he claims to have graduated from. So either Tyler doesn't exist, or Marcus never actually knew him in college. I closed my eyes, trying to process what James was telling me. My daughter was engaged to a con artist who was using a false identity and had asked me for $100,000 for what was almost certainly a non-existent investment opportunity. James, I need copies of everything you found. Official documents, court records, everything. I'll email them to you within the hour. David, you need to tell your daughter about this before she marries this guy, I know. But she's so invested in this relationship, and Marcus has already started poisoning her against any skepticism I might express. Then you need to find a way to show her the truth that she can't dismiss or rationalize away. That night, I printed out all of James's research and spread it across my desk. Court documents showing Marcus's fraud convictions. Employment records showing his pattern of job hopping through questionable companies. The legal name change documents. Tax filings showing periods of unemployment that didn't match his claims about his career. It was all there in black and white. The man my daughter was planning to marry was a career criminal who had assumed a false identity specifically to deceive her. But as I stared at the documents, I realized that simply presenting Emma with this information might not be enough. Marcus had already been working to undermine my credibility with her. If I came forward with these allegations, he would probably claim I had fabricated them because I didn't like him. I needed to catch Marcus in his lies in a way that Emma could see for herself. The next morning, I called Marcus. Hey, David, he said, sounding pleased to hear from me. Have you had a chance to think about the investment opportunity? I have, and I'm interested in learning more. You mentioned that you could put me in touch with Tyler. Absolutely. I can arrange a meeting. When would work for you? How about this weekend? I could drive up to meet him if he's local, or we could do a video call if he's out of state. Let me check with him and get back to you, Marcus said. I'm sure he'll be excited to talk to you about the opportunity. Great. And Marcus, I'd love to see some of those documents you mentioned, the prospectuses and financial projections. Could you email those to me? Of course. I'll get those to you by tomorrow. I knew Marcus would never be able to produce Tyler or the investment documents because they didn't exist, but I wanted to give him enough rope to hang himself with before I confronted Emma with the truth about who she was really planning to marry. The weekend came and went without any word from Marcus about the meeting with Tyler. When I called him Monday morning, he had an excuse ready. Tyler had to fly to New York unexpectedly for another deal, Marcus said, but he should be back next week. The good news is, he's still holding our spot in the investment group. What about the documents you were going to send me? There was a slight delay with those too. Tyler's legal team is making some updates to the prospectus. Should have them by Wednesday. Wednesday came and went. So did the following week. Every time I called Marcus, he had another excuse for why Tyler wasn't available and why the documents weren't ready. Finally, I decided it was time to force the issue. I called Emma and asked her to set up a dinner meeting with Marcus for the following Friday. We can discuss the investment in person, I told her. And Marcus can bring Tyler along so I can meet him face to face. That's a great idea, Dad, Emma said. Marcus will be so happy that you're taking the investment seriously. Friday evening arrived, and Patricia and I met Emma and Marcus at Romano's, the Italian restaurant where Patricia and I had celebrated our own engagement 30 years earlier. Marcus looked nervous as we sat down, and he was sweating despite the restaurant's air conditioning. So, I said after we'd ordered our meals, I'm looking forward to meeting Tyler tonight. What time is he planning to join us? Marcus's face went pale. Actually, Tyler couldn't make it tonight. He came down with food poisoning this afternoon. That's unfortunate, I said calmly. What about those investment documents? Did you bring copies for me to review? There's been another delay with those. Tyler's lawyers are still making revisions. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a manila folder. Marcus, I think we need to have an honest conversation. Dad, what's that? Emma asked, looking confused by the tension she was clearly sensing. These are some documents I've been reviewing, I said, opening the folder. Marcus, I've been trying to verify the information you gave me about this investment opportunity, and I've run into some interesting problems. Marcus was gripping his water glass so tightly, I thought it might shatter. What kind of problems? Well, for starters, I called Digital Marketing Solutions, the company where you told me you work. They've never heard of you. Emma looked at Marcus with confusion. What's he talking about? Of course they know you. You've worked there for 2 years. There must be some misunderstanding, Marcus said quickly. Maybe they connected him to the wrong department. I pulled out one of the documents from James's investigation. Marcus, what's your real name? The question hung in the air like a bomb. Emma stared at me, then at Marcus, waiting for an answer. What kind of question is that? Marcus said, his voice rising slightly. You know my name. Actually, I don't think I do, I said calmly. According to the legal documents I have here, you legally changed your name from Marcus Valdez to Marcus Thompson 2 years ago. Right around the time you started dating my daughter. Emma's face went white. Marcus, is that true? Marcus looked trapped, his eyes darting between Emma and me. It's complicated. It's actually quite simple, I continued. You changed your name. You lied about where you work, and you invented an investment opportunity to try to steal $100,000 from my family. The question is, what else have you been lying about? That's when Marcus made his second mistake. Instead of coming clean or trying to explain himself, he went on the attack. You hired a private investigator to spy on me, he said, his voice full of outrage. What kind of father does that to his daughter's fiancé? The kind of father who cares enough to protect his daughter from a con artist, I replied. Emma looked devastated, tears beginning to form in her eyes. Marcus, please tell me this isn't true. Please tell me you didn't lie to me about who you are. Marcus reached for her hand, but she pulled away. Emma, baby, I can explain everything. Yes, I changed my name, but I had good reasons. And yes, I've had some job transitions lately, but that doesn't mean I don't love you. What about the investment? Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Is Tyler real? Marcus couldn't meet her eyes. The investment opportunity is real, Emma. I may have exaggerated some of the details to make it sound more appealing to your father. So Tyler doesn't exist? Marcus was silent. Answer me, Emma said, her voice breaking. Does Tyler exist or not? Not exactly, Marcus admitted, but the investment opportunity is still real. I was going to figure out those details later. Emma stood up from the table so quickly that her chair fell backward. You lied to me about everything. Your name, your job, your friend, the investment. What else have you been lying about? Emma, please sit down, Marcus pleaded. Let me explain. I love you. Everything I did was because I love you and want to give you a good life. By stealing from my father, by lying to me about who you are. Other diners were starting to stare at our table, but Emma didn't seem to care. She pulled off her engagement ring and threw it at Marcus. We're done, she said. We are completely done. As Emma stormed out of the restaurant, Marcus turned to me with a look of pure hatred. You just ruined your daughter's happiness, he said. I hope you're proud of yourself. Marcus, I said quietly, my daughter's happiness was never your concern. You were planning to steal from my family and disappear. The only thing I ruined was your con game. Marcus left the restaurant without another word, leaving Patricia and me to pay for a dinner that no one had eaten. I found Emma in the parking lot, crying in her car. Emma, I'm so sorry, I said through her open window. I know this is painful, but you needed to know the truth. I feel so stupid, she sobbed. How could I not see it? How could I be so blind? You weren't stupid, sweetheart. You were in love. Marcus is a professional con artist. Deceiving people is what he does for a living, but there must have been signs. Things I should have noticed. I thought about that. In retrospect, there had been signs. Marcus's vagueness about his past, his reluctance to introduce Emma to old friends or family, the way he always seemed to have money, but was evasive about his work. But those signs were subtle, especially to someone who trusted him. The important thing is that you know the truth now, I said. Before you married him, Emma wiped her eyes and looked at me. Dad, what if he comes back? What if he tries to contact me? It was a good question. Marcus had invested 2 years in this con, and he might not give up easily. We'll deal with that if it happens, I said. But Emma, I think you should know, Marcus has a criminal record. Fraud and identity theft. He's on probation. Emma's eyes widened. He's a criminal. I'm afraid so. Which is why we need to be very careful about how we handle this situation. As I drove home that night, I thought I'd seen the last of Marcus Valdez Thompson. I thought the worst was over. I was wrong, the real nightmare was just beginning. The harassment started 3 days after the confrontation at Romano's. Emma called me at work on Monday morning, her voice shaking with fear and anger. Dad, Marcus has been texting me non-stop since Friday night. He's sent me over 60 messages, and some of them are getting really nasty. What kind of messages? I asked, already feeling my protective instincts kicking in. At first, they were apologies, begging me to give him another chance, saying he could explain everything. But when I didn't respond, they got mean. He's calling me names, saying I'm an ungrateful bitch who doesn't deserve someone who loves me as much as he does. My jaw clenched. Emma, have you saved these messages? Yes, I screenshot everything. Dad, I'm scared. He knows where I live, where I work. What if he shows up? Listen to me carefully. Don't respond to any of his messages. Don't answer calls from unknown numbers. And if he shows up anywhere near you, call the police immediately. I'm also going to call James and see what our legal options are. James, the private investigator who helped me research Marcus's background. He'll know how to handle this situation. That afternoon, I met with James at his office downtown. I brought printouts of the text messages Emma had forwarded to me, and as James read through them, his expression grew increasingly grim. This is escalating quickly, he said. Look at the progression here. Friday night, he's apologetic and pleading. Saturday morning, he's angry but still trying to win her back. By Sunday night, he's moved into threatening territory. James pointed to one particular message that had made my blood run cold. You think you can just throw away 2 years like it means nothing? You think your daddy can protect you from the consequences of humiliating me? You're going to regret this, Emma, both of you are. Is this enough for a restraining order? I asked. Probably, but David, I think there's something else you need to know about Marcus. After our conversation Friday, I did some additional digging into his background. What did you find? James opened a thick file folder. Marcus has done this before. At least 3 times that I could verify, probably more. He targets young women from wealthy families, gains their trust over a period of months or years, then either tries to extract money directly or gets access to their financial accounts. Are you saying Emma wasn't his first victim? not by a long shot. I found records of 2 other broken engagements in the past 5 years, both following similar patterns. In one case, he actually made it to the altar before the bride's family discovered his criminal background. What happened in that case? The marriage was annulled within 48 hours, but not before Marcus had gained access to the woman's bank accounts. He cleaned out her savings, about $80,000, and disappeared. The woman's family eventually tracked him down, but he'd already spent most of the money. He served 18 months in prison for that one. I felt sick. Emma could have been bankrupt before she realized what happened. Or worse. David, there's something else. In the most recent case, when the family confronted Marcus about his lies, things got violent. Violent how? He broke into the woman's apartment and trashed it. Destroyed family photos, personal belongings, anything that had sentimental value. Then he started stalking her, showing up at her workplace, following her home. It took a restraining order and 3 arrests before he finally left her alone. I stared at the documents in James's file, trying to process what he was telling me. Are you saying Emma might be in physical danger? I'm saying we need to take these threats very seriously. Marcus has a pattern of escalating behavior when his cons fall apart. And based on these text messages, he's already moving in that direction. That evening, I sat down with Patricia and Emma to discuss the situation. Emma had taken the day off work and was staying with us temporarily, afraid to go back to her apartment alone. I don't understand, Emma said, curled up on our couch with a cup of tea she wasn't drinking. How could I have been so wrong about him? How did I not see any of this? Because Marcus is a professional manipulator, I said gently. This is what he does for a living. He studies his targets, learns what they want to hear, and becomes the perfect boyfriend. You weren't naive, you were targeted by an expert. But 2 years, Dad, 2 years of my life. We talked about having children together, buying a house, growing old together. Was any of it real to him? It was Patricia who answered, her voice soft but firm. Emma, whatever feelings Marcus might have had for you, they were secondary to his real goal, which was access to money. Men like him are capable of compartmentalizing their emotions in ways that most people can't understand. The important thing now, I said, is keeping you safe while we figure out how to make Marcus go away permanently. What do you mean, make him go away? I showed Emma the additional information James had gathered about Marcus's previous victims. As she read through the police reports and court documents, her face went pale. He's done this to other women, at least 3 that we know of. And in each case, when the relationship ended, he became increasingly aggressive. Emma set down the papers with shaking hands. What are we going to do? First, we're going to file for a restraining order tomorrow morning. I've already talked to a lawyer, Sarah Mitchell. She specializes in harassment cases. She thinks we have a strong case based on the text messages alone. Will a restraining order actually stop him? It's a legal tool that gives the police authority to arrest him if he contacts you or comes near you. But Emma, you need to understand that a piece of paper won't physically protect you. We need to take practical precautions too. Over the next hour, we developed a safety plan. Emma would stay with us for at least the next week. She would vary her routes to work and avoid predictable patterns. We would install a security system at her apartment before she moved back. Most importantly, she would never be alone in public until we were sure Marcus had moved on. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for Thursday morning. Sarah Mitchell met us at the courthouse, carrying a thick folder of evidence. I've never seen such a clear-cut case, she told us as we waited for our hearing. The text messages alone are enough, but when you add Marcus's criminal history and the pattern of behavior with previous victims, this should be straightforward. Marcus didn't show up to contest the restraining order, which Sarah said was typical for people in his situation. The judge granted a temporary order valid for 2 weeks, with a follow-up hearing scheduled to make it permanent. Mr. Valdez is prohibited from contacting your daughter in any way, the judge explained to me. No phone calls, text messages, emails, social media contact, or third-party communication. He cannot come within 500 feet of her home, workplace, or anywhere she might reasonably be expected to go. Violation of this order is a criminal offense punishable by immediate arrest. I felt a sense of relief as we left the courthouse. Finally, we had some legal protection against Marcus's harassment. That relief lasted exactly 18 hours. Friday morning, Emma called me at 6 a.m. sobbing hysterically. "Dad, you need to come over here right now. Something's happened." Patricia and I threw on clothes and drove to Emma's apartment complex as fast as legally possible. We found Emma standing in the parking lot with 2 police officers staring up at her second-floor apartment. Every window had been broken. Spray painted across the white brick wall beneath her windows were the words "lying whore" and "you'll pay for this." "When did this happen?" I asked the senior officer, Detective Rodriguez. "Sometime between midnight and 5 a.m., according to the neighbors. No one saw anything, but one resident heard glass breaking around 2 a.m. and assumed it was an accident. Has anyone been inside the apartment yet?" "We were waiting for Ms. Harrison to arrive before entering." "This is connected to the restraining order you filed yesterday." "We believe so," I said, showing him a copy of the order. Detective Rodriguez nodded grimly. "Let's see what we're dealing with inside." The apartment was a disaster. Every piece of furniture had been overturned or destroyed. Emma's clothes had been cut up and scattered across the floor. Picture frames were smashed, their glass mixed with the contents of drawers that had been dumped out. In the bedroom, Marcus had used permanent marker to write obscenities across the walls, but it was the kitchen that made my blood run cold. Marcus had taken every knife from Emma's knife block and driven them into the walls, creating a display that looked like something from a horror movie. On the refrigerator, held in place by one of the knives, was a note written in Marcus's handwriting. "This is what happens to bitches who humiliate me. Next time it won't be your apartment." Emma broke down sobbing when she saw the note. Patricia wrapped her arms around our daughter while I tried to control my own rage. "Detective Rodriguez," I said, my voice tight with anger, "what are our options here?" "Well, this is clearly a violation of the restraining order, plus breaking and entering, vandalism and criminal threats. We'll put out a warrant for his arrest immediately. But Mr. Harrison, I have to ask, does your daughter have somewhere else she can stay while we track this guy down?" "She's staying with us for the foreseeable future." "Good, because whoever did this is escalating rapidly. The level of anger and violence displayed here suggests that he's not thinking rationally anymore." Over the next few days, we learned just how far Marcus's irrationality had progressed. He had quit his probation. Officer had lost track of him after he failed to report for his weekly check-in. His landlord said he'd abandoned his apartment, leaving behind only some clothes and a few pieces of furniture. "He's gone underground," James explained when I called him for an update. "Probably using cash only, staying in cheap motels or with friends who don't know about his legal troubles. The good news is that this makes it harder for him to blend into normal society. The bad news is that it makes him much more desperate and unpredictable. How long can someone live like that? Not long, usually. Eventually he'll need to surface for money, or he'll make a mistake that gets him caught. The question is whether he'll try to contact Emma again before that happens." We got our answer the following Tuesday. Emma had been staying with us for a week, and I thought we were being appropriately cautious. She was taking time off work while the police searched for Marcus, and she never left the house alone. But Tuesday afternoon, while Patricia and I were both at work, Emma decided to go for a walk around our neighborhood to clear her head. She called me at 3:30. Her voice barely controlled panic. "Dad, he found me. Marcus found me. Where are you?" "I'm at the Starbucks on Maple Street." "Dad, he was following me. I saw him in his car when I was walking, and when I realized it was him, I ran into the coffee shop. There are people here, so I think I'm safe for now. Stay exactly where you are. I'm calling the police, and Patricia and I are on our way." I hung up and immediately dialed 911, then called Patricia to tell her to meet me at the Starbucks. As I drove across town, my mind raced with worst-case scenarios. Marcus had clearly been watching our house, waiting for an opportunity to get Emma alone. What would he have done if she hadn't noticed him following her? I arrived at the Starbucks at the same time as 2 police cars. Emma was sitting at a table near the back, surrounded by concerned customers who had obviously sensed that something was wrong. "He's not here anymore," Emma said as I hugged her. When I came inside and asked them to call the police, I looked outside and his car was gone. Officer Martinez, one of the responding cops, took Emma's statement while his partner canvassed the area looking for Marcus's vehicle. "Ms. Harrison, can you describe exactly what happened?" "I was walking down Elm Street just trying to get some fresh air. I noticed a car driving slowly behind me, but I didn't think much of it at first. But then I realized the car was staying exactly the same distance behind me, even when I changed my pace." "When did you realize it was Mr. Valdez?" When I turned around to look directly at the car, I could see him in the driver's seat. He was staring right at me, and when our eyes met, he smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was like he was enjoying scaring me. "What did you do then?" I started walking faster, and he sped up too. So I ran into the nearest public place, which was here. Officer Martinez made notes while Emma talked, but I could see from his expression that this wasn't an unusual story for him. "Mr. Harrison," he said to me, "your daughter did exactly the right thing. She stayed in a public place and called for help immediately. But I have to tell you, this kind of stalking behavior often escalates quickly. Is there any way you can get your daughter out of town for a while?" "Out of town?" Sometimes the best way to break this kind of cycle is to remove the target from the stalker's immediate environment. If he can't find your daughter, he might move on to other activities and eventually get caught for something else. That evening, Patricia and I discussed Officer Martinez's suggestion with Emma. "I can't just run away," Emma said. "I have a job, a life here. Why should I have to uproot everything because Marcus is a psychopath?" "Because your safety is more important than your job," Patricia said firmly. "Emma, this man broke into your apartment and destroyed everything you own. Now he's following you around town. What do you think he's planning to do next?" Emma was quiet for a long moment. "Where would I go? Your Aunt Susan has been asking you to visit her in Portland for years," I said. "You could stay with her for a few weeks while the police track down Marcus. What if he follows me there? He doesn't know about Aunt Susan. We've never mentioned her to him, and she's not connected to you on social media. As far as Marcus knows, you don't have any family in Oregon." It took another day of discussion, but Emma finally agreed to the plan. We booked her a flight to Portland, under her mother's maiden name, paid for with cash to avoid creating a digital trail that Marcus might be able to follow. The night before Emma's flight, as we were finalizing her travel arrangements, our home security system alerted us to motion in the backyard. I looked out the kitchen window and saw a figure standing under the oak tree at the back of our property, just beyond the reach of our motion-activated lights. The figure was too far away to identify clearly, but something about the posture and build looked familiar. "Patricia, call the police," I said quietly. "I think Marcus is in our backyard." I grabbed a flashlight and headed for the back door, but Patricia caught my arm. "David, don't go out there. If that's really Marcus, he could be armed." She was right. But the thought of him lurking around our property, potentially planning to break into our house while Emma was inside, made my blood boil. I turned on every exterior light we had and shined the flashlight toward the oak tree. The figure immediately disappeared into the shadows, but I could hear footsteps moving quickly through the neighbor's yard. The police arrived within 5 minutes, but by then there was no sign of anyone in our backyard or the surrounding area. However, Officer Martinez, who had responded to Emma's stalking report, found something that made our situation much more serious. "Mr. Harrison, come look at this," he called from beneath the oak tree. Under the tree, Marcus had left what could only be described as a shrine. There were dozens of photos of Emma, some that looked like they'd been taken during their relationship, others that appeared to have been shot with a telephoto lens from a distance. The photos were arranged in a circle around a small pile of Emma's belongings that must have been taken from her apartment during the break-in: her jewelry, some personal letters, and a stuffed animal she'd had since childhood. In the center of this display was a piece of paper with a message written in Marcus's handwriting. "You can't hide from me forever. This is a significant escalation," Officer Martinez said grimly. "This kind of ritualistic behavior suggests that he's becoming obsessed to the point of potential violence. I'm calling for additional patrols in your neighborhood, but, Mr. Harrison, I strongly recommend that your daughter leave town immediately. Her flight is tomorrow morning." "Good. And I suggest you consider whether you and your wife should leave too, at least temporarily. This guy clearly knows where you live, and he might try to use you to get to your daughter." That night none of us slept. We took turns keeping watch, listening for any sound that might indicate Marcus had returned. Emma's suitcase sat by the front door, packed and ready for her early morning flight. At 4 a.m., as I sat in our living room watching the street through a gap in the curtains, I saw a car drive slowly past our house. It was too dark to see the license plate or identify the driver, but the car stopped for almost a minute directly in front of our driveway before moving on. Marcus was still out there, watching, waiting for his opportunity. At 6 a.m., Patricia and I drove Emma to the airport, using a route that took us through several residential neighborhoods, constantly checking our mirrors for any sign that we were being followed. We parked in the short-term garage and escorted Emma all the way to the security checkpoint. "Call us the minute you land in Portland," I told her as we said goodbye. "And Emma, don't post anything on social media that might indicate where you are." "I won't, Dad, and thank you. I know this is hard on you and Mom, too." As we watched Emma disappear through the security checkpoint, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. Relief that she would be safely away from Marcus, sadness that our family had been torn apart by one man's criminal obsession. But as Patricia and I drove home from the airport, I couldn't shake the feeling that sending Emma away might not be enough. Marcus had invested too much time and energy in his pursuit of our daughter to simply give up because she'd left town. And I was beginning to realize that Patricia and I might be his next targets. The phone call came at 2:17 a.m. 3 days after Emma left for Portland. I was jolted awake by the shrill ring of our landline, the phone we kept for emergencies because it couldn't be easily traced or hacked like cell phones. My first thought was that something had happened to Emma. "Hello?" I answered, my voice thick with sleep and worry. "David Harrison?" The voice was unfamiliar, rough, with a slight accent I couldn't place. "Who is this?" "Someone who knows Marcus Valdez. Someone who knows what he's planning to do to your family." I was fully awake now, sitting up in bed while Patricia stirred beside me. "What are you talking about?" "Marcus owes me money. A lot of money. When he can't pay, he gets creative about finding new sources of income. Your daughter was supposed to be his big score, but you screwed that up for him. Who are you?" "That doesn't matter. What matters is that Marcus is desperate now, and desperate men do stupid things. He's been asking around about you, where you work, what kind of car you drive, whether you have any other sources of money he could tap into." My blood ran cold. "Are you threatening my family?" "I'm warning you. Marcus borrowed $50,000 from people who don't accept late payments kindly. He was supposed to pay it back with the money he got from your daughter's wedding fund. Now he's behind schedule, and he's talking about doing something drastic to get the cash." "What kind of something drastic?" "Insurance fraud. Stage a break-in at your house. Maybe rough you up a little to make it look convincing. Steal anything valuable, then split the insurance payout with him. He figures a successful accountant like you probably has expensive jewelry, electronics, maybe some cash lying around." I gripped the phone tighter. "When?" "Soon, maybe this week. Look, I don't give a shit about your family, but if Marcus gets arrested for assault or burglary, I'll never see my money. So I'm giving you a heads up. Get out of town for a while, or at least make sure you're protected." The line went dead. I sat in the darkness for several minutes, trying to process what I'd just heard. Marcus wasn't just stalking Emma anymore. He was planning to escalate to home invasion and potentially violence against Patricia and me. "David?" Patricia's voice was soft but alert. "Who was that?" I told her about the conversation, watching her face grow pale in the dim light from our alarm clock. "We need to call the police," she said immediately. "And tell them what?" "That an anonymous caller warned us about a potential crime that might happen sometime this week. They can't arrest Marcus based on a phone call from someone who won't identify himself. So what do we do?" I was quiet for a moment, thinking through our options. We could leave town like the caller suggested, but running away felt like surrendering our lives to Marcus's criminal behavior. We could increase our home security and hope for the best. But if Marcus was desperate enough to attempt armed robbery, security cameras wouldn't stop him, or we could take a more proactive approach. "Patricia, how do you feel about setting a trap?" The next morning I called James and Detective Rodriguez separately to discuss my plan. It was risky, but both men agreed it might be our best chance to end Marcus's harassment once and for all. "The key is making sure we have enough evidence to put him away for a long time," Detective Rodriguez explained during our meeting at the police station. "If we're going to do this, we need to catch him in the act of attempted burglary or assault. That, combined with the stalking charges and the restraining order violations, should be enough for a significant prison sentence." "What about the danger to my wife and me?" "We'll have plainclothes officers positioned around your house, and you'll both be wearing wire transmitters. The moment Marcus makes his move, we'll be there. But Mr. Harrison, I want you to understand that there are no guarantees with an operation like this. If Marcus is armed, or if he's more violent than we expect, things could go wrong very quickly. I looked at Patricia, who had insisted on being part of the planning session. What do you think? I think we've been running scared for 2 weeks, and it's time to take our lives back, she said firmly. If this is what it takes to stop Marcus, then let's do it. That afternoon, we began setting up what James called the honey trap. The plan was to make our house look like an easy target while actually turning it into a carefully monitored ambush. First, we made a show of leaving town. I called my office and loudly announced to my secretary that Patricia and I were taking an impromptu vacation to visit Emma in Portland. I made sure to mention that we'd be gone for at least a week, and I asked her to cancel all my appointments. We drove to the airport with suitcases, making no effort to avoid being seen. But instead of getting on a plane, we circled back to James's office, where we spent the night reviewing the details of our operation. The next evening, Patricia and I returned to our house under cover of darkness, parking in the garage, so our car wouldn't be visible from the street. Detective Rodriguez and 3 other officers took positions around the property, hidden but close enough to respond quickly if needed. Inside the house, we made everything look normal but tempting. Patricia left her jewelry box open on the bedroom dresser, displaying her wedding ring and the pearl necklace that had belonged to her grandmother. I left my laptop computer and some cash visible on my desk in the home office. Then we settled in to wait. The first night, nothing happened. We sat in our darkened living room, wearing bulletproof vests and wire transmitters, listening to every sound outside. A car driving past at midnight made us both jump. The neighbor's cat knocking over a trash can at 2 a.m. sent Patricia reaching for the panic button we'd been given. But Marcus didn't show up. The second night was more of the same. Hours of tense waiting, false alarms, and growing doubts about whether our plan would work. On the third night, at 11:47 p.m., the exact time Margaret used to go to the basement in my previous story, though that seemed like a lifetime ago now, we heard the sound of breaking glass from the back of the house. "This is it," I whispered into my wire transmitter. "He's here." Detective Rodriguez's voice came through our earpieces immediately. "We see him. He's entered through the back door. Stay calm and remember, let him get far enough inside to establish clear intent to commit burglary." We could hear footsteps moving through our kitchen, then down the hallway toward the front of the house. Marcus was being surprisingly quiet, but not quiet enough to avoid detection by people who were listening for him. The footsteps paused outside our bedroom door. Patricia grabbed my hand, and I could feel her trembling despite the brave face she'd been putting on all week. Then Marcus made his mistake. Instead of just grabbing the jewelry and leaving, he opened our bedroom door. Patricia and I were hidden in the walk-in closet, watching through a crack in the door as Marcus entered our bedroom with a flashlight and what looked like a crowbar. He went straight to Patricia's jewelry box and began stuffing its contents into a canvas bag. But then he stopped. He played his flashlight around the room, and I could see his face clearly for the first time in weeks. He looked haggard, desperate, with several days' worth of stubble and dark circles under his eyes. This wasn't the polished, charming man who had been dating my daughter. This was someone who had been pushed to the edge. "David Harrison," Marcus called out suddenly, his voice echoing through the house. "I know you're here. Your car is still warm in the garage." My blood turned to ice. Somehow Marcus had figured out that we hadn't really left town. Come out, wherever you are." Marcus's voice was taking on a sing-song quality that was utterly chilling. "Let's have a little chat about that $100,000 you owe me." Detective Rodriguez's voice crackled through our earpieces. "He's escalating. We're moving in now." But Marcus heard something, a footstep outside, or maybe the click of a radio, because suddenly he was moving toward our closet with the crowbar. "Raised, found you," he said with a grin that belonged in a horror movie. That's when everything went wrong. Instead of waiting for the police to reach him, Marcus yanked open the closet door and grabbed Patricia by the arm, dragging her out into the bedroom. "Let go of her," I shouted, lunging forward, but Marcus swung the crowbar in my direction, forcing me back. "Shut up," Marcus snarled. "You cost me everything, old man. You and your little background checks and your police friends. Do you have any idea what you've done to my life? Let my wife go and we can talk about this," I said, trying to keep my voice calm while Patricia struggled in Marcus's grip. Talk? Oh, we're way past talking. You humiliated me in front of your daughter. You made her think I was some kind of monster. You destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me. Marcus, you destroyed it yourself when you tried to steal from my family. Steal? Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. I wasn't stealing anything. I was offering you an investment opportunity. If you'd been smart enough to take it, everyone would have been happy. There was no investment opportunity. You admitted that Tyler doesn't exist. Details, Marcus snapped. I would have figured something out. I always do. But you had to go digging into my past, didn't you? You had to ruin everything. Through our earpieces, we could hear Detective Rodriguez coordinating with his team. Subject has hostages. Repeat, subject has hostages. Moving to containment positions. But Marcus seemed to sense that time was running out. He pressed the crowbar against Patricia's throat and started backing toward the bedroom window. Here's what's going to happen, he said. You're going to transfer $100,000 into an account I'll give you the number for. If you don't, I'm going to hurt your wife, and then I'm going to find Emma in Portland. Oh yes, I know where she is, and I'm going to hurt her too. You don't know where Emma is, I said, hoping to call his bluff. Portland General Hospital, Marcus said with a triumphant smile. She's staying with her Aunt Susan at 2247 Northwest Everett Street. Susan Miller, age 56, works as a nurse in the pediatric ward. Should I go on? My heart sank. Somehow Marcus had tracked down Emma despite all our precautions. How did you find her? You're not the only one who can hire a private investigator, and you're not the only one with contacts in useful places. Did you really think you could hide your precious daughter from me? That's when I heard the most beautiful sound in the world. Detective Rodriguez's voice coming from the bedroom doorway. Marcus Valdez, this is the police. Drop the weapon and let the woman go. Marcus spun around, dragging Patricia with him. Stay back. I'll hurt her. No, you won't, Detective Rodriguez said calmly. Because you're smarter than that. You're already looking at breaking and entering, burglary, assault, and violation of a restraining order. If you hurt Mrs. Harrison, you're looking at attempted murder. That's life in prison, Marcus. Is $100,000 worth spending the rest of your life in a cage? For a moment, Marcus seemed to consider this. I could see him calculating odds, weighing options. Then his expression hardened. I've got nothing left to lose, he said. But as he raised the crowbar toward Patricia, two things happened simultaneously. Detective Rodriguez's partner, Officer Chen, appeared at the bedroom window behind Marcus, having climbed up from our back patio. And I grabbed the ceramic lamp from Patricia's nightstand and hurled it at Marcus's head. The lamp caught Marcus in the temple, stunning him just long enough for Patricia to break free. Officer Chen tackled him through the window, and within seconds, Marcus was face down on our bedroom floor with his hands cuffed behind his back. David Harrison, Marcus said as the officers lifted him to his feet. This isn't over. Even if I go to prison, I have friends. People who know where you live, where Emma works, where your wife shops. You'll never be safe. Actually, Detective Rodriguez said as he read Marcus's rights, it is over, because you just threatened a police officer and his family while being arrested for multiple felonies. That adds another 5 to 10 years to your sentence. As they led Marcus out of our house, I realized he had never said anything about having friends or contacts who could threaten us in the future. But his words still sent a chill through me. The trial took 8 months. During that time, Marcus was held without bail due to the seriousness of the charges and his history of flight risk. Emma returned from Portland after the first month, but she moved in with us rather than going back to her apartment. The trauma of Marcus's stalking had left her afraid to live alone. Marcus's lawyer tried to argue that his client was the victim of entrapment, claiming that we had deliberately lured him into committing crimes he wouldn't have otherwise committed. But the evidence was overwhelming. The text messages, the destroyed apartment, the shrine he'd built in our backyard, and dozens of witnesses who had seen him following Emma around town. The most damaging testimony came from Marcus's previous victims. Sarah Mitchell, one of the women James had identified during his investigation, flew in from Seattle to testify about Marcus's pattern of behavior. Her story was so similar to what had happened to Emma that it was almost like listening to the same case twice. He told me his name was Michael Torres, Sarah testified. He claimed to work for a marketing company and said he had gone to USC. Everything was a lie. He gained my trust over 18 months, got access to my bank accounts after we got engaged, and stole nearly $100,000 before disappearing. Did Mr. Valdez become violent when you discovered his deception? The prosecutor asked. He broke into my apartment and destroyed everything I owned. Then he stalked me for 3 months before I finally got a restraining order that stopped him. When the jury returned their verdict after only 4 hours of deliberation, Marcus was found guilty on all counts: breaking and entering, burglary, assault, stalking, violation of a restraining order, criminal threats and identity theft. The judge sentenced him to 15 years in state prison without the possibility of parole for the first 7 years. As the bailiff led Marcus away to begin serving his sentence, he turned back and looked directly at Emma. "I really did love you," he said quietly. Emma met his gaze steadily. "No, you didn't. You loved what I could give you. You never loved me." It was the last time any of us saw Marcus Valdez. 6 months after the trial, Emma met someone new. His name is Daniel, and he's a social worker who specializes in helping victims of domestic violence. When Emma told him about her experience with Marcus, Daniel didn't try to minimize it or rush her past it. Instead, he helped her understand that what had happened to her wasn't her fault, and that her caution about trusting new people was a healthy response to trauma. The difference between Daniel and Marcus, Emma told me one day, is that Daniel wants to help me heal from what happened. Marcus wanted to use my wounds to control me. Daniel and Emma have been dating for 8 months now, and they're taking things slowly. Daniel has never asked me for money, never tried to isolate Emma from her family, and never been evasive about his background. In fact, he's almost aggressively transparent, offering to provide references from previous employers, encouraging Emma to talk to his friends and family, even suggesting that I run a background check if it would make me feel better. "I want Emma's family to trust me," he told me recently, "and I want to earn that trust through my actions, not through charm or manipulation." Last month, Emma and Daniel announced their engagement. But this time there was no pressure, no rushed timeline, no mysterious investment opportunities. Daniel had saved money for the ring over the course of several months, and he asked Emma to marry him during a quiet dinner at home, with no fanfare or elaborate production. Most importantly, when Emma called to tell me about the engagement, the first thing she said was, "Dad, I want you to know that Daniel and I have talked about our finances extensively. We've shared our credit reports, our bank statements, and our financial goals. There are no secrets between us, and there never will be." As I write this, Emma and Daniel are planning a small wedding for next spring. It will be nothing like the elaborate affair Emma and Marcus had been planning, just family and close friends, in the same church where Patricia and I were married 35 years ago. The guest list is short, but everyone on it is genuine. There are no mysterious friends who might not exist, no business associates with questionable backgrounds, no elaborate stories about college roommates turned successful entrepreneurs. Most importantly, Daniel has never asked me for money. Not for an investment opportunity, not for wedding expenses, not for a down payment on a house. When I offered to help pay for the wedding, he and Emma politely declined, saying they wanted to pay for it themselves as a way of starting their marriage on their own terms. "We appreciate the offer, Mr. Harrison," Daniel said, "but Emma and I want to build our life together based on what we can earn and save ourselves. That way we'll never have to worry about owing anyone anything, or having anyone question our motives. It's been 3 years since the night Marcus broke into our house. Can we still get updates from the prison system about his status? He's appealed his conviction twice. Both appeals were denied. He's been written up multiple times for fighting with other inmates and refusing to participate in rehabilitation programs. According to his probation officer, Marcus continues to maintain that he's the victim in this situation, claiming that Emma led him on and that I destroyed his life out of jealousy and prejudice. He shows no remorse for his actions and no insight into how his behavior affected our family. Emma has moved on with her life, but she's also learned valuable lessons about protecting herself. She's more cautious about sharing personal information with new people, more aware of red flags in relationships, and more willing to trust her instincts when something doesn't feel right. Marcus taught me that love isn't supposed to make you feel isolated or anxious, she told me recently. Real love makes you feel supported and secure, not constantly worried about whether you're good enough or whether your partner is being honest with you. Patricia and I have also changed how we approach relationships and trust. We're more involved in Emma's life now, not because we don't trust her judgment, but because we've learned that even smart, capable people can be targeted by skilled manipulators. We've also learned to trust our instincts more. Looking back, both Patricia and I had felt uneasy about Marcus from early in his relationship with Emma, but we'd dismissed those feelings as overprotectiveness or generational differences. Now we know that sometimes that nagging sense that something is wrong is actually your brain picking up on subtle inconsistencies and red flags that you haven't consciously recognized yet. If I could go back and do anything differently, I wouldn't have waited so long to investigate Marcus's background. The signs were there from the beginning. His vagueness about his past, his reluctance to introduce Emma to old friends, his evasiveness about his work. If I'd trusted my instincts and done some basic checking early in their relationship, we might have saved Emma months of emotional manipulation and ourselves months of fear and trauma. But I've also learned that there's a difference between being cautious and being paranoid. Daniel has been completely transparent about his background, and we've verified his honesty through normal conversation and observation, rather than hiring private investigators or running elaborate tests. The key, I've realized, is knowing the difference between normal privacy and deliberate deception. Everyone has aspects of their past they'd rather not discuss immediately, but a person with nothing to hide won't become angry or defensive when asked reasonable questions about their background, their work, or their relationships. Marcus became hostile whenever anyone questioned his stories or asked for details about his past. Daniel, by contrast, answers questions openly and has volunteered information about potential concerns in his background, like the fact that he was briefly married in his 20s to someone he met in college, a relationship that ended amicably when they realized they wanted different things in life. "I want Emma to know everything about me," Daniel told us, "especially the mistakes I've made and the lessons I've learned. I don't want her to marry an idealized version of me. I want her to marry the real me, flaws and all." That more than anything else convinced me that Daniel is nothing like Marcus. Marcus presented himself as perfect, with no past mistakes, no character flaws, no financial problems, no complicated relationships. Daniel presents himself as human, someone with a history, with lessons learned from experience, with both strengths and weaknesses. As Emma prepares for her wedding to Daniel this spring, I'm struck by how different this experience is from planning her wedding to Marcus. There's no stress, no pressure, no rushed timeline, no mysterious expenses that need to be covered by other people. Emma and Daniel are planning their wedding together, making decisions based on what they want rather than what will impress other people or create a certain image. They're excited about starting their life together, but they're not desperate to get married as quickly as possible or to have the most expensive celebration they can arrange. Most importantly, they're both looking forward to the marriage, not just the wedding. When Emma talks about Daniel, she talks about the life they're planning to build together, the ways they support each other's goals and dreams, the problems they've already solved together as a team. When she talked about Marcus, she mostly talked about the wedding, the dress, the venue, the honeymoon, the party. It was as if the wedding was the destination rather than the beginning of something larger. Now I understand that Marcus was never planning a marriage, he was planning a con. The wedding was just the final step in gaining legal access to Emma's money and our family's resources. Everything else, the romance, the future planning, the discussions about children and retirement, was just window dressing designed to keep Emma invested in the relationship until he could achieve his real goals, the $100,000 investment opportunity he presented. To me, wasn't a last-minute scheme. It was probably the whole point of his relationship with Emma from the very beginning. He'd researched our family's financial situation, identified me as a potential source of significant money, and spent 2 years positioning himself to make that request at exactly the right moment. If I had given him the $100,000, he probably would have disappeared within days, leaving Emma heartbroken and our family financially devastated. The marriage would never have happened, or if it had, it would have lasted only as long as it took Marcus to gain access to Emma's accounts and our other assets. Looking back, I realized that Marcus's request for money before the wedding wasn't a red flag. It was the entire con finally revealing itself. Everything that had happened before was just preparation for that moment when he asked for $100,000, based on nothing but trust and a fabricated story about a non-existent friend and investment opportunity. My refusal to give him the money didn't ruin Marcus's life. It saved my family from financial and emotional devastation that could have taken years to recover from. As I prepare to walk Emma down the aisle to marry Daniel, I'm grateful for the experience with Marcus. As painful as it was, it taught our family valuable lessons about trust, caution, and the importance of verifying people's claims rather than simply believing them because we want to. But more than that, it helped Emma understand what real love looks like by showing her what false love looks like. She knows now that a partner who truly cares about her won't try to isolate her from her family, won't ask for money under suspicious circumstances, and won't become angry when reasonable questions are asked about his background or behavior. The man who asked me for $100,000 before my daughter's wedding taught us all that the most expensive mistakes aren't always financial ones. Sometimes the most costly thing you can do is trust someone who hasn't earned that trust. And sometimes the best investment you can make is in discovering the truth, no matter how much it hurts to find it.